Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Snowden.
Thank you very much. I'm hearing myself in my own ear here. Okay. So first off, I want to say thank you for inviting me. I wasn't expecting to be here. It's nice to be with you and a part of the community. It's a very interesting time to be having these kind of conversations. One of the things that I like to reflect on, basically any forum, whether we're talking about government, excuse my cough, please. If we're talking about government, if we're talking about cryptocurrency, if we're talking about privacy, is hacking, where it comes from, what it is. Because I feel like that's really defined our time. People in this room don't really need it explained to them, but I think everybody explains it a little bit differently. The way that I think about it is that hacker is simply someone who understands the rules of the system better than those who created it. And hacks are the product of exploiting that gap in awareness, causing the system to produce a result that was presumed to be forbidden, that it was impossible, right? Because this idea we have that there are rules, aren't there? But what we've seen in the span of our lives, even for the youngest members of the audience, is that the rules aren't set. They're not fixed. They're not bound. They're not universal laws. Instead, we have this array of assumptions, this array of untested assumptions, or rather ones that are at varying levels of testing. And so then I reflect on the crypto community broadly and the Bitcoin community specifically, and I go, what are we doing here? When it's a land rush, when anything is possible, when the landscape is changing under our feet, how are we spending the time? And I can feel, a little bit of excitement returning to the space. And there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who are here today talking about price. If you look at crypto Twitter, it feels like the only thing that people care about is price. And for me, there are two ways to judge that. One is to say that price is the only thing that people will ever care about. And while that's true for some, I don't think that a system ever attains the level of success that we've seen, and it doesn't attain the level of, doesn't attain the price level that is driving the interest that we see going on with all these people, heavy breathing over the amount of green papers per token that we have today. As a consequence of speculation alone. It has to come from somewhere. It has to mean something in order for people to be interested in the first place. So the other possibility, if it's not pure speculation, is that there's not much else going on, where that's the perception. And so the sort of new capabilities, the new possibilities, the things, sort of the tech, for the people who are in it for the tech, has been unable to successfully compete for attention. And that worries me. That worries me because the world is ending, and we're playing games. If you look at any headline, if you look outside of the computer, if you go outside and look at prices not denominated in Bitcoin, when you look at them in your local currency, everything is going crazy. If you think about the cultural zeitgeist, if you think about the discourse, if you think about the conversations that we're having, people are talking about failure. They're talking about isolation and atomization of people, where we're being pushed further and further apart. The inability to imagine solutions to our current political conflicts, whether we're talking about domestically or internationally, due to the inability to compromise. All resolutions to all problems are increasingly approaching our opponents concede, they are defeated or whatever, but somehow they go away so that the world as we envision it takes hold. And we can't escape that unless we have a better solution or unless we play that game better, right? The reality is we assumed the system would continue to operate under certain constraints and certain directions for sort of the way the world functions. And those functions have been hacked. And we're still here playing Find the Price. Now, what worries me about that is the idea that we're playing this game because the game is too good. I saw something in the last weeks, maybe 2 months. It was an interesting bit of historical trivia. It was that Lenin wrote only a few weeks before the revolution, which he said in a speech in Switzerland, that he didn't think he would live to see. He cited peasants in a letter that they had written to the Tsar in 1905 that said, "Sire, do not refuse aid to thy people. Demolish the wall that separates thee from thy people. Order and promise that our requests will be granted and that thou wilt make Russia happy," right? "If not, we are to die on this very spot. We have only two roads, freedom and happiness, or the grave." When the system considers your life to be one of its primary resources, a crucial move that is available to any collective is to hold one's own life for ransom. You need to push forth the question, are the concessions that are being asked more easily endured than the loss of life that withholding those concessions would provoke? Not only the loss of labor, right, but the cost of extinguishing the intransigent lives. This is effectively the root of all minority power, all labor bargaining, that it will be harder to remove me than to live with me. And it feels increasingly like people have forgotten that because they're all sort of staking these maximalist positions. A central political problem today is that there aren't a lot of people that are willing to say, future and happiness or the grave. People are not willing to put that much on the table, that much skin in the game. And there are far fewer who, even if they were willing to do that, are able to push that argument credibly, right? Because people have to believe that you mean it. And sort of the onlookers, the audience, are so comfortable. They've become so native to the situation as it exists today that they find it hard to believe that others would be willing to do that. Even the peasant's life as they exist today has become so sufferable, as according to declaration, accordingly all experience hath shown, that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, that it becomes impossible to right themselves by abolishing the forms of government to which they are accustomed. Even if you have the foreknowledge of inevitable loss, even if you know that continuing to do what you are doing today will result in a degraded position tomorrow, for you, for your family, for your principles, for your beliefs, for everything around you, for your system, for Bitcoin, for whatever, the game feels too good to leave. Most people right now, if they have a soft bed, hot meals, the endlessly scrolling dopamine drip, and for some in the room, a 1 minute candlestick chart, they don't want to leave their house. There is nothing out there that calls to them more strongly than the comfort of the inside. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think we need to remember, particularly in these moments of instability, that we are all part of a much bigger game. And Bitcoin is one of our strongest levers in that. The systems that we are influencing, that we are exerting leverage on, payments and finance, will shape what the world of tomorrow looks like. Now, we have to cross some hurdles to get there in a meaningful way. Right now, the reason everybody's getting excited about the price is they're thinking about ETFs or whatever. We don't really want that to be the thing that moves price, even if price is moving. Because that is a kind of subordination, that is a kind of subjugation, that is a process of taming that we see being played out. We need to look at more fundamental things we've been aware of for a while, but people simply haven't confronted, they haven't combated, they haven't engaged with in the strong and sort of meaningful way. That is hard, that is uncomfortable, that is risky, but it is necessary. Bitcoin has a privacy problem. Everybody knows it, and it's for as many years as I've been giving these talks now, it is still unfixed. The world has a privacy problem. Okay, so what do you do about it? People in the room go, oh, let me do coin join. I'm going to erase this by shuffling these around, and I'll do 200 levels of mix-ins or something like that. Cool, yes. I am proud of you for knowing that it's possible, but no, stop. That's not what we're looking at. Contorting yourself to be able to pass through the keyholes of the tyranny that is surrounding us. That's not the solution. The goal is not to, wake up in the morning and be blessed with the perfect suite of knowledge and skills that will allow you to dance through the Byzantine hell of a smartphone's, evil, invisible, perfidious network traffic that is diming you out to everybody they can without asking your permission, just in order to be able to interact with society in some approximation of safely, right? You go, oh, well, I've got VPNs and I've got these things they're blocking this. I'm using ad blockers and I've got a hardened browser and whatever. That's not the goal. And it only benefits, the smallest minority fraction. When we talked about, the old case of Lenin and these people who are, sort of putting their axe on the ground, it comes from the collective. There has to be a mass. There has to be enough people. And the more exclusive your community becomes because of the burden of knowledge that it requires to participate in it, the smaller that collective will necessarily be. And we need to recognize that the status quo of the world it is, whether it's the way sort of on-chain privacy analysis is happening, and they're tracking cross-chain transfers, and you see people tweeting this stuff out, but oh look, this person moved this, and that person moved that. That's not normal. It's not acceptable, but it is here. It's inside the room. It's on your phone. It's in your pocket. It's on the Wi-Fi. It's the cameras that watched you walk into the venue to now have vehicle recognition and person recognition baked into the algorithm. It's on the chip. It doesn't even cost the manufacturer anything extra to add in. They've just got to enable it in the software. It is everywhere. And the thing that I want you to take away from all that is that acting in secret is not freedom, right? It's not the goal. It's not that we want to liberate ourselves as the individual. We want to liberate the collective individual. And accepting that it's normal for there to be processes out there where you have to submit, a notarized photo of your taint. Let's say, your on-chain taint maybe, to your rulers in Manhattan via an automated form in order to establish your identity or your proof of funds in order to be permitted to spend your own money. That's not freedom. The necessity of coin joins and so on, that is because you are unfree. That is proof of funds. That is proof of unfreedom. And we do have people who have worked on this. They've done amazing things. There's the tornado cash problem, where you have governments beginning to go after these developers and try to jail them for doing the right thing. And, you have on-chain analysts who are going, oh, some bad person used this tool, and so you got to go after the developers. Developers got to shut this down. That's not how it works. When you build roads, the person who laid the asphalt is not responsible for the people who drove down the road. And if we buy into that as a community, if we start enabling that as a community, we're making not just the world worse for ourselves, we're making it worse for everybody else. What we need to do is we need to recognize that the challenges that we're facing are great, and that there is going to be risk in building solutions. If you are building tools that you think plausibly governments will want to, unperson you for, you need to think about that at the front of the process, not the back of the process. That's where all the OPSEC can come in handy, because you might not be able to teach everybody in the world how to protect their identity, how to sort of protect their communications, how to avoid being identified for their on-chain transactions or whatever. But you might be able to do that for yourself. And if there's enough of you, 2 or 3 of you, that's all it takes. And perhaps even one person, like Satoshi, maybe your identity will never be known, even if they are looking for you, even if all of them are looking for you. But it doesn't matter, because the thing that you're producing is not, for profit. It's not that you're trying to bring things out of this onto your bank account. It's recognizing that you can create systems now that are unowned and still function. They can be decentralized. They can be private by default. And that is powerful. And we need to stop asking for permission for this. All of the people who are tracking the price and looking at the headlines and, going, oh, the SEC, the SEC. Gary Gensler is not Daddy Bitcoin. I don't really care what he thinks. And I don't think you should either. I think when you look at the influence that these institutions are having on the ecosystem, there are positives, and I'm not saying there won't be, right? Like, institutional money flows in, number goes up, everybody's happy, great, sure. But then you get a lot more of these Manhattan offices, you get a lot more of these processes, you get a lot more of this pressure to submit to these processes and these institutions that you do not control, that you cannot influence. And we should focus on what we can influence. And it's important to remember that there is a lot that can be influenced. When you think about why everybody's so excited about the SEC and it's like stable coins and everything like that, is because there's a real demand for stable coins, because they want to find a way to offset volatility. And okay, if you want to engage in that, those sort of legacy systems, you can, but don't try to emulate the dollar. Liberate it, seize it, right? Make it unowned, make it decentralized, make it private. None of the stable coins that exist right now that I'm aware of are private by default. There are some that at least don't have blacklisting or whatever, as opposed to like a Tether or a USDC. But it's important to remember that that's not enough. Just like with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is enormously powerful, enormously useful. That's as it is. If we think about Bitcoin as how it was, there was a time when everybody thought Bitcoin payments were private, right? Just because there wasn't a name on the account. And people are still, journalists are still out there saying, oh, Bitcoin, the anonymous digital currency or whatever. We know it's not. That level of sophistication creeps up. The ledger is always out there. The ways it will be applied and exploited will only grow. What about tomorrow, right? In 2013, I used Bitcoin to pay for the servers that hosted the files that went to journalists for the archive of material that they use for the mass surveillance disclosures, right? I didn't do that with an extraordinary level of privacy because I knew inevitably it would lead back to me in time. It was just to buy time. And I knew they weren't super sophisticated at it yet. I knew they would have to find one thing and another thing and another thing to be able to track it back and connect to my identity. And by that point, I would be off the X, right? But what about the future, right? If somebody did something like that today, I've got to imagine if there's somebody at the NSA who has like a Coinbase account or something like that, and they buy crypto and then they see, there's some new disclosure out, some new revelation that the NSA is giving you brain worms. And they go, which employees do we have who could have possibly funded this server? There's going to be a list. It'll just be beep, boop. Here's, the 25 people who could possibly have that, who bought this at this day, at this level of on-chain activity, like it's all there. And then they go, okay, of these 25 employees, how many had access to these documents? And then you're down to 3. And then they just take them in the room and they sweat them until you know which one it realistically is. Because people do act differently in those contexts, depending on whether they do or don't have knowledge, no matter how much they might not want that to be the case. So what I mean is our space is being cut off. The space for invention, space for creation, space for transaction has been narrowed and is continuing to be narrowed. And at what point do we respond? At what point do they see our response? At what point do they stop marching off our developers to prison? And at which point do we start taking their authorities away? Because that is what Bitcoin set out to do. If you remember the Genesis block and what was behind it, we see the risk of bank failures growing as the sort of rate of bond losses increases. We're about to have another moment of systemic unease. And I don't think the pitch that we are offering to the world is ready for it. But it could be, and it should be, and it can be. New and exciting things are still being created. One of the things I've been really interested in recently is Nostr. Notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. And for me, the reason it's so powerful is not just because we have so many problems with the censorship of speech, deplatforming, whether we're talking about Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever people are using right now. Mastodon, which is neat, but it's just a million little sensors instead of one big sensor. When you get there, the thing that's so important about Nostr is that it is trying from the beginning to conceptualize the integration of free speech and free trade. Open, instant, immediate payment is a world-changing idea. And so we're here today gathered in this room with the world ending behind us. But if we're lucky, we have an idea right now, and you have ones that nobody's heard of that could be world starting. So let's get to it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Please keep your hands together. Thank you so much, Edward. Another wonderful talk. He will be giving a, hello. Could I have my mic on? Thank you. Edward will be giving a talk in the Deep in about 15 minutes time. I'm not sure if he mentioned it towards the end there. So if you are a Whale Pass holder, please do ask him questions. Thank you so much, Edward. It's a fantastic talk, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much. Please put your hands together.
Stay free.
Phenomenal stuff. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Why is my mic on? Hello? My mic is back on. Fantastic. Hope you're all having a lovely day so far. That was clearly one of the highlights. Do make the most of Bitcoin Amsterdam. Make the most of your ticket and explore all the various things that they have on offer here. We do have a teeny tiny break right now before the next panel starts. Please enjoy the refreshments and take in some fresh air. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Bitcoin Amsterdam Live Desk, presented by Bitcoin Magazine. We just listened to Edward Snowden giving a very inspirational talk, talking about all the problems that's going on with present day. Some of the great quotes that he had said were, if you watch the news today, it's all doom and gloom. There's only two options, freedom and happiness or the grave. So, Eric, what would your first insights on the talk that we just listened to by Edward?
I mean, wow, just what an inspirational hero to be able to have here, and to all the Americans, it's our responsibility to bring this hero home. And he really, I felt like he actually made a real call for us to ask a question to ourselves, that our space is being cut off and narrowed. And what are we going to finally do to respond to this? And I think it's a really important question that we all need to be considering with what seems to be that doom and gloom that he was speaking to.
Yeah, definitely. He was saying fitting yourself through a keyhole of hell as you're going through ISPs to hide what you actually do is not actually freedom-minded. It's only for the very minute minority. But he was asking us to fight for the majority, basically. So, Susie, what are your thoughts? What can we do as a Bitcoin community to help the communities embrace Bitcoin?
He was just encouraging us to build.
Yeah.
It was a call to action.
Definitely.
He was asking us to go out there and build solutions that are needed because our governments don't have our best interests at heart.
I completely agree. He also brought up Nostr. So,
Yes.
Eric, to you, real quick. He was talking about Nostr and how it's notes and other stuff transmitted over relays, and he said that this is built from the ground up to be truly free and decentralized, just like Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Nostr is an incredible technology that's really taking this ability to essentially run your own relay that's very similar to a Bitcoin node. And you can say whatever you want. If people don't like that, they don't have to respond to your relay, and it's a very, very powerful tool. In a lot of ways, like, this is what kind of my core thesis in crypto sovereignty is about, is that, like, we can start using cryptography as a base level technique to start building new tools that we need. And it's very clear that we need a social media tool that is free and open source for everyone to use.
Yeah, Susie, going to you. The BIS, or the Bank of International Settlements, just had a tweet the other day, or it was a tweet taken out of context from one of their presentations. They're trying to build another chain surveillance tool, or chain surveillance division, basically tracking all crypto transactions. Obviously, Bitcoin's lumped in with that. What are your thoughts? What are ways that we can try and fight this?
That's so tricky. I just don't think they've probably got the skill set to do it anyway. I think that's the only thing that actually gives me hope is the fact that they haven't got a clue. And the people that will be building this, the skill set that's required, they're not going to work on a project like this.
That's an excellent point, Susie. There are very few government projects that I can get behind and say the government has done this more efficiently and better. But like, that actually entails like a pretty interesting problem. Like, the governments are going to be widely deploying this to hundreds of millions of people, and if it's buggy and terrible code, like, quite quickly, like, that's gonna cause for some really big chaos.
It will fail. All government projects usually cost a lot of money and they fail, don't they? So, are we worried? No.
No. Yeah, Eric, one quick thing. 30 seconds to you. Great quote from Edward Snowden was basically saying Gary Gensler is not Daddy Bitcoin. I know many people have been waiting for this Bitcoin ETF, but what do you say to that? Just, I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
To me, I'm not interested in Bitcoin as a monetary asset. I'm interested in it as a political freedom asset. And so when he pointed out Gary Gensler and the SEC, like, we shouldn't be asking them for permission. We need to be taking away their authority, and that's exactly what Bitcoin does.
Thank you so much. We're heading back to the main stage now. Catch you later.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.